You've got questions, we've got answers. It's time for Ask the Captain. First question, Snowman X18. It's quite a call sign. When should passengers actually worry when it comes to things like turbulence? Well, you don't have to do much for passengers to worry about turbulence. Some folks, as soon as there's a little bit of a ripple, they're grabbing their seat and they're making sure their seatbelt is fastened. I would say the time to get engaged is when I turn on the seatbelt sign, for sure. But if the captain ever comes over the PA and says, flight attendants, take a seat, or ladies and gentlemen, make sure your seatbelt is fastened, you should have it fastened already, but make sure it's fastened at that point. Sometimes we can get into bumps that are going to more than spill your drink and you don't want to get hurt. So pay attention, but don't worry about that. Okay, no pun intended. Next question is from Journal of Jade. Do you ever listen to music in the cockpit? Well, Jade, I would never admit to that. And I would say the answer is no, not really. There was 2 pilots years ago when I was a first officer who liked to bring those little Bluetooth headsets and turn on some music. It was really awkward because it's against the rules. You're not allowed to do that in the cockpit. And I had to summon my best administrative urging voice to say, hey, Captain, how do you feel about that? Or help me understand what you're doing with the music. Some good dialogue questions. And eventually both guys turned it off. They kind of got the message, but no, you're not supposed to do that. And no, I don't. All right, next one is from ES_Price. Have you ever seen anything on a walk around or whatever you call it that made you call up the mechanics? Yeah, absolutely. On a number of occasions that's happened. The airplane has a lot of things that dock up with it, like the jet bridge and the catering truck and some of the baggage conveyors and so forth. It's real easy to ding the airplane, to put a little dent in the side of the airplane. All of the dents in the side of the airplane are logged in a book that I actually have up in the cockpit. And each one is marked with a little round, looks like a nickel that's glued to the side of the airplane to let me know that one's already been inspected and it's good to go. If I see a dent and, heaven forbid, a hole in the airplane that hasn't got one of those next to it, then I call the mechanic and say, yeah, come out here and check this out. There's been other things over the years, but that's probably the most noticeable one. All right, next is, hello, it's me, 22. All right, me. Here we go. Our pilots, oh my word. Our pilots are as promiscuous as everyone says. And if so, what's a lady passenger got to do to get her pilot's attention? Well, I would say this, 22. That ship has sailed for good old Captain Steeeve, and he doesn't want to get himself into trouble with the fair and lovely Mrs. Captain Steeeve. So I'm going to leave that up to you and your girlfriends. How about that? Yeah. Jet with Jordan is next. What's the most beautiful view you've ever had from the cockpit? Oh, my word. This one is so easy. We were flying out of Gibraltar. Now, Gibraltar's not in Spain, so I don't want to hear about it in the comments. I know it belongs to the UK, but it's at the bottom of Spain is where Gibraltar is located, and it's an absolutely breathtakingly gorgeous place. The Rock of Gibraltar, the Prudential Insurance Company, has got that big rock. Well, it looks just like that. And there's a runway that goes out into the ocean, and we were taking off out of there one day. I was in the Navy and flying out, and as we're turning out over the open ocean, the Rock of Gibraltar's on one side, and directly underneath of us was a submarine just heading out to sea on the surface, and there was a bunch of dolphins just jumping in the wake. Oh, I wish I'd had a camera to take a picture. It was just absolutely gorgeous. All right, there you go. Next question is this. Tay Streams. All right, Tay. Do pilots ever get bored during long flights? Yes. Absolutely. Probably the hardest part of my job is trying to fight fatigue and stay awake. And now don't get concerned. We do, but it's a big part of the job. What do you do to stay awake? Well, sometimes we rock, scissors, paper. A good conversation is really helpful. If the other guy or gal can hold a conversation, that's really helpful. Sometimes we answer important questions like Ginger or Marianne. Your choice. Let me hear about it in the comments. Yep. All right. Next one is from Lucas Hype. Do you actually say Roger, or is that just a movie thing? No, actually, we do say Roger all the time. And sometimes it's a concise way to just acknowledge what air traffic control has told you you don't have to repeat back everything all the time. Although if you're given an instruction like climb to an altitude, you do have to read that back word for word. But if they say, hey, traffic's at your 1 o'clock, take a look for it, I can go, Roger. All right, and we do that all the time. My Spanish friends south of the border, they all say royer. Okay, royer. Very funny. All right. Nova Explains is next. Is the Mile High Club, I see a theme here in these questions, is the Mile High Club a real thing that people actually do? We'll be right back, but first, a quick word from our sponsor. Recently, we did a deep dive into the radar and radio outages at Newark. And anytime we're reporting on something this complex, with safety concerns, infrastructure issues, and FAA decisions all in the mix, it's critical that we look at a variety of sources to make sure we're getting the full picture. That's why we're so thankful for today's sponsor, Ground News. Ground News is the news comparison platform that helped us immediately understand how this story was being covered. We saw that there were 84 stories in total, with the majority coming from outlets in the political center, 9 from the left and 12 from the right. One of the features I personally love is their bias breakdown. With the Newark coverage, for example, outlets on the left focused on underfunding and outdated systems, while outlets on the right use words like terrifying, pointing to government mismanagement. Seeing those differences helps us understand not just what happened, but how it's being framed. Other helpful tools are the factuality feature to check the reliability of outlets reporting on it, and their location of coverage tool to see how different countries were or weren't talking about it. Here on the channel, we don't want to repeat just one side of the story. We want to understand all sides, sort through the noise, and bring you our take, grounded in the facts. Ground News helps us do that. And right now, they're offering 40% off the Vantage plan. Just scan the QR code on screen or use the link down in the description. We live in a time of polarization, but Ground News helps us to cut through the noise and understand what's happening in the news. Thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this video. It really helps us to make content for you. Well, Nova, I've heard it is. I can tell you that the shortest line from being employed to being unemployed is if I were at work and I were to attempt to join that club, I would lose my job rather quickly. And I'm here to tell you, it ain't worth it. Nash Decoded. How often do you use the autopilot? Almost all the time, Nash. We take off the airplane manually. Some guys will climb it up to 10, 15,000 feet before they turn on the autopilot. Some turn it on a little bit sooner than that. And then we allow the autopilot to fly us all the way to our destination. I typically will turn off the autopilot somewhere around 1,000 feet. Why? Because the autopilot holds the airplane much smoother and much more level than I could if I was hand flying it. If I was hand flying it, you in the back of the airplane, we'd be doing like this. You would eventually get kind of nauseous if I did that. So it's for your protection and your safety, and also it would just tire us out. So on an 8-hour flight, I need to show up a little bit refreshed. The autopilot is hugely helpful with that. Indy Echo has a question. Have you ever heard the pull-up terrain alert? Why can't they make GPWS, which is Ground Proximity Warning System, alerts sound less scary? Well, that's a good question. Have I ever heard it for real? No. Have I heard it in simulation in the trainer? All the time. And you have to respond to that. If it says, whoop, whoop, pull up terrain, you have to immediately cob on all the power. You have to make sure that your speed brake is not deployed. You have to pull that airplane all the way back up into the pitch limit indicators, and you got to climb for all you're worth because it's telling you that you're too close to the terrain, especially if you're in clouds. There may be a mountain or something out ahead of you, and you got to climb as fast as you can. Why in the world would you want to make GPWS less scary? You want it to be scary and get your attention. Yeah, so it works. McJumbos has a question. What is the biggest misconception that you get as a pilot? Wow, that's a good question. The biggest misconception is probably that pilots are calm, cool, and collected all the time. Even though we try to put off that persona, there are times when pilots get nervous. Now, before they key up the mic to make a public address to the passengers in the back, hopefully they captain has gotten all the nervousness out of his voice. There's nothing worse than making a PA and making it worse in the back of the airplane. Because if you were to listen to my voice and think, that guy sounds concerned, you know what? That's not the right message I want to send. But yeah, we're human beings like everybody else. And do we get scared? Sure. Yeah. Theo Insight. Theo, what happens if the checklists get skipped? That's kind of funny. The checklists don't get skipped. Sometimes they get delayed. There's a checklist on my Boeing 777 called the Cruise Task Checklist. Now, it's not really a checklist. It's just tasks that you want to remember to do sometime during cruise, like choose the right altitude, review your fuel, make sure that the temperature is not too cold outside for your fuel. Sometimes there's a couple of little in-flight checks you have to do, and it's all on this Cruise Task Checklist. Many times that checklist gets overlooked, and we'll start our descent, and when we're bringing up the descent checklist, we haven't even done the cruise checklist yet, and guys will rifle through it real fast. And I always make the joke that Cruise Task Checklist is like the story of my life. I get overlooked very often, and when you do finally get to me, you rush through me to get to the next guy. All right, but yeah, it happens. Wow, these have been great questions. Well, I'll see you next time on Ask the Captain.